superheroes, fairy tales, and overcomers. Today we're going to talk about a father's fight of faith. Now, on Mother's Day, I talked about Moses' mother and putting stuff in the basket and floating it down. And people were asking me after church, they were like, man, that message was for me and I'm not a mother. Well, that was the whole point, right? So same thing today. Don't check out, well, this is good for the fathers. This is for you too, all right? So we're talking about a father's fight of faith. So a superhero is a character with extraordinary powers that performs heroic actions. So when you think of superheroes on TV, but we're superheroes in our families. They're superheroes in our communities, in our schools, in our churches. Never mind. But the thing about superheroes is the reason I use this is because it takes you from the ordinary to the extraordinary. When you think about a superhero, you think of someone that can do something extraordinary. So what I want you to think about as I'm talking about this is going to the next slide, but going to this next level in your understanding. So now, before some true, I'm a real, cartoon, DC world, Marvel, don't get mad at me, okay? For the rest of y'all not gonna know about this, but there are people who are very serious about this stuff. So people were talking to me last week or 2 weeks ago, they were like, well, that person's in this universe and that person's not. I was like, I'm just talking about cartoons, okay? So Batman, everybody know who Batman is? You don't have to be all super duper or no Greek. Everybody know who Batman is? Yeah. Let me tell you something that's interesting about Batman. Batman is a man who does not actually have a superpower. He doesn't really, Spider-Man got bit by the spider and this crazy thing happens and he starts having these abilities. Superman came from a planet where he had these abilities. But this dude, Batman, Bruce Wayne, was really just a normal guy. But he has this ability to tap into the fullness of who he is. Why I wanted to use Batman this morning is because some of you are waiting for some old superpower, and I'm telling you, you got everything you need to do some heroic things right now. You don't need to wait on anything else. You don't got to get something else. And what happens with this guy here is when I think about his actual skills and what he does, you can go to the next slide. It says this, he's an exceptional martial artist, right? Combat strategist. He's inexhaustible wealth. Now, how many of y'all want to be in inexhaustible wealth? Come on. Y'all so spiritual. Stop it. Because if I gave you money right now, you'd be going to brunch. Stay with me. Brilliant detective skills, advanced technology, but he's also the CEO of Wayne Enterprises. My point I wanted to see is this. He doesn't have all these super things. He's taking his natural things and making them super. So what I want you to do for a moment is to take a moment and start thinking about your life and go, how do I take what I have and superfy it? Now, I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to use it because you can say stuff at church. Everybody say superfy. So you can do anything like that in church. Be like, I don't know, just say it. Say it with him, superfy. But what I'm trying to get you to realize is Batman had this ability. He just started working out. He took his natural body to the point that he worked out. Then he got himself a little costume because he didn't want people to know who he was. But he didn't like when the evil was winning. See, the core of him, the reason why he did all this, he didn't like to see somebody getting over on somebody else. What I've come to tell some of you is the problem is not that you don't recognize you're a superhero, you haven't identified your villain. You've not gotten frustrated with your community go, this is just enough. You've not gotten frustrated with your health and said, wait a minute, something has got to change. See, the heroic is on the inside of you. All I'm trying to do this morning is stir it up to bring it out of you. And so although I talked about Superman last week, and next week I got the special message called Wonder Woman for this beautiful woman up here that is awesome. So make sure you come next week. But the reason I'm going to talk about this man is he's a natural man who's utilizing all of his resources. So how does he win? So Batman uses this stuff, his money, his wealth, his ability to work out. You know, all of us could work out. I know, we bought a Peloton and it became a really nice museum downstairs. I would go down there and look at it this equipment is nice, not touch. When I finally started using it, I was like, I had to call the people back. I was like, how do I turn it back on? It wasn't that the stuff wasn't there, I wasn't using it. What stuff is around you that you're not using? What is going on in your life? What's going on in your school? What's going on in your job? It's there, but you're not using it. And don't get mad when somebody else uses all they have and you have the same opportunity. What I'm telling you today, you're a superhero, right? You have these abilities to do these super and heroic things. So how does he win? Batman uses his resources to win. Next slide. A man with wealth and prestige. He uses his resources to save his daughter's life. So what I'm talking about now is I've switched from Batman to a man in the Bible. I'm going to talk about another man who has a lot of wealth. No, you can go back, I'm sorry. Who has a lot of wealth and prestige. But then this man is going to utilize his resources to save his daughter's life. Now again, before you check out and go, this is a good Father's Day message, this is a message for anyone that has to face something that seems like it cannot be overcome. This is for everyone who's getting ready to, either you're in a situation, you're like, I don't really know how this is going to work. What I want to do is open you up to the possibility of what God can do through you when you sacrifice. The psalm was saying, I surrender all. Not some. See, I think part of the problem is we singing part of that song. I surrender. I'm not saying all, though. You skip that part. And then you go, all to thee. No. Let's go back to what are you surrendering? I was sitting in the front row listening to the song this morning, that song and the song before that. First of all, if you're missing praise and worship, you're missing an opportunity to get ministered to. I appreciate that you come at 11:58, but if you would actually come at 11, you can hear a mouse dancing on cotton in here. If you come early enough, what will happen is what God does through the word and through the songs, it actually rinses you off. It gets you prepared so that when I'm getting ready to preach, it's not halfway through that you start settling in. So I literally come to get ministered to through the music so that I can get up here and do my part. Okay? So that's a little commercial for you. Give God about 3 Sundays if you come on time. No, I'm serious. I'm not trying to be funny. But give him 3 Sundays and come in and go, let me get in this worship. Let me just go in because it changes you. It sets you up. So now remember, we're talking about superheroes, fairy tales, and overcomers. So let me bring you to a part of the Bible in Mark where it talks about a man named Jairus. Here's how it goes. So it says this in Mark 5:21. After Jesus crossed over by boat, a large crowd met him at the seaside. One of the meeting place leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell to his knees. Now stay right there. One of the meeting place leaders. One translation said he was a synagogue leader. One translation says he was the governor or the mayor of the city. So he has prestige, he has title. But he comes and he falls to his knees in front of Jesus. Watch this. Beside him, as he begged, he says, my dear daughter is at death's door. Come and lay hands on her so she will get well and live. I'm talking about a good father. See, what a good father will do is get out of his own way so that God can have his way. He took his title, he took his prestige, and he said, listen, I don't want to be everything to everybody out here, but my home falls apart. One thing my dad said, and one thing I told my kids, I ain't going to preach to everybody else and then y'all go to hell. Okay, y'all, that's from my house. No, because he says, see what this man was doing, he comes running with his mayor robe on, with his title, and everybody in the city going, that's Jairus, that's Jairus. He gets through everybody, and he comes to Jesus, and he falls to his knees, and watch what he says. He says, come and lay hands on her, so she will. Not I hope, not I wish. He says, so she will get well and live. Next. Tip number 1 for you is come in faith. I don't care what's going on in your situation, you show up in faith. I don't care what they diagnosed you with, come in faith. Yeah, I understand that's the situation, but I'm coming in faith. I know what the money looks like right now, but I'm coming in faith. I know they're laying off everybody in the neighborhood, but I'm coming in faith. I know what they're saying is going to happen in my community, but I'm coming in faith. I know they're telling me a kid who has my skin color won't graduate from college, but I'm coming in faith. Jairus came in faith. So he shows up to Jesus, not saying, could you, wish you would have. He says, listen, come put your hands on her, so she will. How are you showing up to your challenges? And more importantly, how are you showing up to Jesus? Are you showing up to Jesus? Well, if you're out there, if you would have time, if you get me out of this, I know we haven't talked in a while. Stop that. Come and pray to him to know who he is. I know you're a God that can do something amazing. I know this. I know in my innermost being. I know if you just put your hands on her, this will happen. I know, says Jairus, could you just come and put your hands on my daughter so she will live? Watch what happens next. Now watch this. Jesus went with him. This is so important. Jesus does not talk to him. The problem for some of us is, Jesus, I can't hear Jesus. He ain't saying nothing. Follow what he's telling you to do. Now, you just grab this. He shows up to Jesus. Jesus, you can come lay your hands on my daughter. I know that she will live. He says, so he went. So you waiting for a word? You know you're doing it. God, sent me a sign. You have done the same. You have opened that Bible and dropped it like, nope, that's not the script. Y'all be playing Jesus like Vegas. Nope, 6. Bring it back. He says Jesus went with him. See, what I need you to understand is Jesus is initially following Jairus' faith. It's not the other way around. Jairus isn't following Jesus' faith. He said, come and lay your hands on my daughter so that she will live. And it says, so Jesus went with him. Meaning Jesus was like, if you're believing, I'm believing. If you're standing, I'm standing. You want to go and play? Yeah, I'll go with you, lay hands on her. How are you showing up to Jesus? How are you showing up in the situation? Stop talking about how bad the boss is and start saying, my boss loves me. My boss goes out of the way to do great things for me. My boss finds extra money for me. My boss is finding a way to get me promoted. And if God has got to change the entire company, he'll do what he has to. But my God won't leave me. My God won't fail me. My God won't stop moving. But it's based on how I show up, not on how he does. How are you showing up to Jesus? So Jairus is showing up, and it says, so Jesus went with him, and all the people followed. Remember when it started off, it said Jesus got off the boat. It was a big crowd. I always tell people, you take, a Beyonce, a Michael Jackson, a Diana Ross, a president of the United States, mix that together. Jesus was all that plus. So everybody was coming out. When they heard Jesus was coming to town, everybody was coming out. Because Biden's a good guy, but I ain't seen him lay hands on nobody and heal him. So don't you think when people was like, this dude named Jesus is healing folks, get Junior, get cousin, get grandma. Everybody was coming out. So when Jairus started moving and Jesus started going with him, everybody's following him. The crowd around him. So while he's walking, now Jairus is walking. That's Jairus. I don't know how he was walking, but he was walking. In faith. Jesus was walking. And I just feel like Jesus had a little like, all right, how you doing? Love you. That's it. So while he's walking and everybody's touching him, but a woman in the crowd had suffered 12 years with constant bleeding. So while Jairus is doing his thing, there's a woman in a crowd watching the whole situation. She's in the back looking and looking. There goes Jairus is the mayor, but there goes Jesus. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors. And over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she hadn't gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. This woman is now in this crowd looking at Jesus, but her history is this. For the last 12 years, the Bible says she bleeds every day, 24 hours a day. You know what happens when you bleed regularly? You become anemic. When you become anemic, you become weak. When you become weak, you have no energy. But this woman has been dealing with something, but she's seeing an opportunity. When are you going to recognize the next opportunity that God brings your way? Let me give you a hint. For some of you, your opportunity is this morning. You came to say, oh, happy Father's Day. But ladies, I'm telling you, there's a woman in here, I'm thinking this, that God came to talk to you. So now it says, but she's done this and she spent all her money. She got no money left. Now, ain't nothing worse than being sick and broke. You ain't got no more money to get help, and the help you getting's not working. But it says, in fact, she did this for 12 years, but nothing worked. So she had heard about Jesus. See, let me tell you something. This is why you got to share Jesus. I know sometimes it seems a little crazy to have a little thing at your cubicle that says Jesus is Lord. But that might just be enough for somebody to hear about Jesus. What are people hearing you say? This is what I try and tell people. If I'm not living a life, and you ain't got to be perfect. I'm not perfect. But if you're not living a life in a way that there's some separation from the world, then if you're just as bad as I am, why am I going to go with you? Now, every one of you done this. You've been with somebody and somebody say, ooh, this nasty. Taste this. And what do? Let me see. Is it? Is it? Let me see. Is it, you're right. Why did we eat that? Why? But have you also done this? Ooh, this is good. Taste it. And then they take the bite. This is good. And I'd be like, did nobody ask you to do two, though? Didn't nobody ask you to go in twice? Right? So what she did is says this. She says, so she heard about Jesus. So she heard about Jesus. While she was dealing with her issue, let me tell you something. You may hear about Jesus, but Jesus may not have shown up yet. But I told you it's fighting the fight of faith. So she heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. Now, at that point, touching my clothing is not going to be a thing. Just in case you're wondering, you're not going to see me at like 1 o'clock in the morning talking about if you get my suit, you're going to get healed. I'm not saying God can't use fabric, but you ain't going to see me doing that unless God really tells me. You know why? Because the touching of the fabric is not the thing. It's the faith behind touching the fabric. If you have no faith, you're just rubbing some garments. But it says she pushed through the crowd. Now, let me tell you, I told this woman's been bleeding for 12 years. Every day. Been going to the doctor. She's sick. She's weak. But if you can use your last bit of strength sometimes, use everything you got some time to go, I'm going to press through this. I got everything bet on this. I got everything riding on this. But she had heard about Jesus, so she came behind him through the crowd and touched him. For she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. I need you to see the difference when somebody's expecting something and when somebody's hoping for something. Hope sounds like this. I wish God would show up. I hope God does something. But when you're in a position of faith, she walked up, she said, if I can just touch him, I know I'll be made well. I know all of this will stop. I know my whole body will adjust. How? I don't need to know how you're going to do it. God, I just know you will. She said, if I can touch him. One translation says she'd been saying it all the time. Kept saying it. I know if I could get to him, if I could just get to him, if I could get to him. Her faith was not in the moment. Her faith was in the fact of reaching out. Sometimes you got to reach out and say, God, here I am. For she said, if only may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. Immediately. Sometimes your miracle will be immediate. Sometimes you got to wait a little while. Sometimes you got to stand. But there are some times, because of your faith pull, and where God is in the moment, the stuff happens. It says immediately, the fountain of her blood. Now listen, I know the difference between a trickle and I know a fountain. If you've seen a fountain is booming. A fountain means it was pouring out of her. But let me just help you with something. Why didn't she run out of blood? If I've been bleeding for 12 years, it seems like at some point she would have run out. I need you to understand sometimes when the full miracle hasn't happened, God does little miracles. Which means her body kept producing enough blood to process through her, to carry her while she was losing it. What I've come to say is for some of you, you're going through something, you're waiting for the end point. Well, baby, I'm saying stand and wait. But while you're waiting, what God is doing, he's multiplying, he's keeping you, he's sustaining your mind, he's keeping you in the right place. While you can't lose it all, God says, I'll hold you up until I get ready to do the full thing. But this is not the time to give up. I've come to tell somebody, you need to fight with your faith this morning. Immediately. Every day she's bleeding, but enough blood keeps coming. It's losing and coming. It's losing, it's coming. It's losing, it's coming. It's losing, it's coming. God will keep providing. Even if the situation hasn't changed, God will keep providing. Even though it hasn't happened, God will keep providing. I'm telling some of you right now, stand a little longer. Stand a little longer. It says immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus immediately. Now remember, Jairus is walking, Jesus is walking, people touching him, and it says Jesus immediately, knowing in himself that power had gone out of him. See, it wasn't that Jesus had to go get the power. He had the power. She needed to plug in to draw it out. We are on a power grid in the Minneapolis area. We're pulling on the electricity power so it shows up here. See, what you have to understand, the power was with God. The power is still with God. Have you plugged into God? Knowing in himself that power had gone out, he was walking and he turned around and he said, who touched my clothes? Who? Wait a minute. Watch what happens. Then the disciples said to him, you see the multitudes thronging you? And you say, who touched me? Watch this. But he looked around to see her who had done this. He's looking around now, who touched me? But he said, now, interesting. First he says, who touched me? But then he said, and he looked around to see her. What I need you to understand, it started to hone in. He was like, wait, no. There's a woman in here. He's like, I know something. See, it's in the process of him. He's looking for the outcome of power. See, if I get electrocuted, you're going to be able to say, that's the one right there. The one doing this. He electrocuted. He was like, who touched me? But the woman fearing and trembling, you know why she was fearing and trembling? Because the Bible says she wasn't supposed to be outside. She had a disease that if you had this type of disease, you were supposed to stay in the house. Let me tell you something. Sometimes you got to break the rules. Sometimes you got to say, I know I'm not supposed to be at school with myself looking like this, but y'all not going to send my kid crazy. No, I know I'm not supposed to come to work looking like this, but I'm showing up anyhow. I know I'm in the community. See, sometimes you got to go beyond the rules for your miracle. What's the difference? Right now, you might be believing, but you're not moving. You might be praying, but you're not putting an action behind your prayer. Pastor Jori was just saying it, shift. Yeah, you're hearing it, but are you going to do something? Are you going to literally say something? Are you going to start to go home and say, well, get rid of this, let's move that, go back to work and do, what are you going to do? She said it. I'm going to get out here today and I'm going to touch him. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Now, let me ask y'all something. Not near one of y'all, I'm sorry, not one of you in the building. We have a multicultural group. But some of y'all understood when I said, not near one of you. Near is a combination of words. I'm not really sure what they are. But it means y'all. Not one of you has said nothing about Jairus. Trifling. Y'all up here jumping up about the woman. Yes, touch the garment. Yes, Pastor. And nobody said, where happened to Jairus? Y'all ain't thinking about Jairus. Jay who? What happened? But guess who is paying attention to Jairus? So Jesus said to the woman, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. One translation says, because you have been made whole. Whole meaning what? Not just got healed, but I believe the money she lost was coming back. Because whole gives you a different context. So while Jesus is having this conversation with her, the crowd has watched this woman, she is testifying, Jairus is back here in a situation where last time he left, his daughter was dying. He's in a situation where time is of the essence. Okay, Jesus, okay, are we going to leave? Are we going to, this woman going to keep talking? She's just going to keep talking. Okay. But watch this. While Jesus was still doing this and talking to the woman and hearing her testimony, it says, while he was still speaking, some came from the ruler, Jairus, of the synagogue's house, who said, hey, Jairus, hey, we just left the house. She's dead. She was dying when you left. Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? You got to fight with your faith. In that moment could be the breaking. Now, remember when I told you when we started the story, he goes up to Jairus goes up to Jesus, and it says Jesus went with him. But God knows when you are at the point of your break. So Jairus is hearing this. They says, don't bother Jesus no more. She's gone. Next. Tip 2, we remain patient. I'm speaking to you as a father. Come in faith, remain patient. Don't you get frustrated. Don't you take some job. I'm going to take this job because be patient. Give God time to work. Give God time to move. I don't care what your situation is. Don't you rush it to try. No. Be patient. Because while Jairus is being patient, watch what happens next. But while Jesus was talking to the woman and hearing the testimony, and your faith has made you whole, it says Jesus overheard them. That means Jesus can do two things at one time. So here's what I need you to realize, is that when Jesus is blessing somebody over here, he can still know what's going on over here. Oh, it's hard. You can be all religious if you want. It's hard when you believe in God for some stuff and somebody up here talking about, and then God did this. He's amazing. What a mighty God. It's hard when you're sitting over here going, nothing is looking like that for me. He says, but Jesus overheard them, and he turns and says to Jairus, hey, don't be afraid. Just have faith. It doesn't say Jesus spoke to him yet this entire time. I know for some of you, you're waiting for Jesus to say something to you. It's been silent. My mom preached this, man, I don't know, probably in the 80s. It was the first time I had really heard it. And the title of her sermon was similar to this. She said, what do you do in times of silence? No word, but he's with you. Just because he's not saying something doesn't mean he's not with you. Anybody got an introvert as a friend? Can I be honest? Tap the person next to you, say, wake up. Do you know what an introvert is? Now, tell the truth. How many of y'all didn't even hear that word till like 2-3 years ago? No, right? Thank you, Megan. We here. No, seriously, growing up, nobody was an introvert. You might have been shy, but nobody was an introvert. But see, what happens sometimes is sometimes somebody can be real quiet, but they're there. And then all of a sudden they bust up with, I know. You were like, you were here? You were listening? That's what Jesus was doing. He was with them this whole time. He didn't say anything until it was time to say something. I'm speaking this morning to some of you. I'm speaking because Jesus is saying to you, I know you're at the breaking point. I know you're at the breaking point. I know you were like, this is the end. I'm sorry, actually, go back one more time. And it says this. Go back one slide. But Jesus overheard them, and he said, don't be afraid, Jairus. Just have faith. Here's your tip number 3. We choose to follow Jesus. Fathers, I'm telling you what to do. You got to follow Jesus. Mothers, single people, you got to choose to follow Jesus. When Jesus gives you a word, now it's up to you. Because Jairus has a point now. He can go, it's just too late. I appreciate you. But he has a choice. I've come to tell somebody, you have a choice this morning. I've come to tell you, Jesus is saying, I know you're at a breaking point. Don't give up. Don't give up. Just have faith this morning. Now it's up to you. So now Jesus said to Jairus, hey, he has a choice. Then watch what happens. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and it wouldn't let anyone go with him. So they kept going. See, this is what I love about the Bible. It just gives you the inference of things. It's like this. As he has this conversation, they must have kept going. See, some of y'all want this, the band to show up. You want balloons to drop because you decided to walk by faith. All that happens, something happens after Jesus says this, that Jairus goes, let's keep going. Now, I do want to help you understand something. What if Jairus hadn't watched this woman with the issue of blood get healed? So let's say Jesus is following Jairus like they started, and that whole situation doesn't happen. And they're walking, and then somebody comes up to Jairus and says, hey, don't bother the master, your daughter's dead. Maybe that would have been too much for his faith. But because he just saw somebody else get a miracle, it may have built up his confidence again. See, there's two ways to look at this story. Was Jairus frustrated, or was Jairus feeling like, wow, I know I got the right God on my side? See, my point to you is you have two choices when you hear somebody else's testimony. You can stand back there and be judgmental and be like, well, God, when are you going to show up for me? Or you can stand up and say, but if you did it for her, God, you're going to do it for me. If you showed up in their family, you're going to show up in my family. I don't care what the circumstance is. I don't care what the situation is. Here's what I know. I'm more encouraged now than I was a few minutes ago. Where are you? Are you complaining? God, my stuff is serious. Show up. Or are you looking around like, is he doing something for somebody else? Oh, good. God is still in the blessing business. Great. Then Jesus stopped the crowd. So they get to Jairus' house. The crowd is all around. You've ever been to somebody's house when somebody's passed away? There's people there. Family comes by. In the Bible's days, there were women almost like extensions of the ministry who were mourners, who would show up anytime someone passed in black, and they would just cry and put stuff over their head. So when Jesus shows up, Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John. You better be careful who you bring with you to tough battles. You better be careful. Don't bring somebody who's not walking in faith to a battle where you need faith. Now, I told you, I grew up in neighborhoods where we laid hands on each other sometimes to deal with issues. You don't want to bring nobody when you get there like, I don't really fight. Bruh, it's too late. And one of my friends, we got in this argument on the bus. We was fighting on the bus. When we get to the stop, I was living my Christianity in a different way. But we was like, when we get to the stop, I don't know why your head got to do this, but it's what you do. When we get to the stop, when we get to the bus stop, let's see, you talking all that. So we got off the bus stop. I got off, my other friend got off, this other guy got off, and he was the main one talking. Then these other three guys got off, and we was like, what y'all gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? And the dude who did the most talking ran home. We was like, come on. Wait, hey, gone. When I say gone, we was like, me and my boy, then you start doing this. Hey, listen, I think we need to calm down. Who you bringing to your fight? Jesus has 12 disciples, but he was like, all of y'all saved, but I'm bringing 3. Just because you saved don't mean you're ready for my fight. So then he says, bring James, John, and Peter. Go to next. And so when they came to the home of synagogue leader, Jairus' house, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. And Jairus is walking up to his own house. Oh, man. He has to be dealing with flesh situations in a spiritual mindset. Just because you're saved and you know God does not mean this doesn't hurt. Father's Day is one of the toughest days for me. It's just, out of all the days, my dad passed, but it's something about Father's Day because we celebrated him. I used to always go buy him gifts, and we do all this stuff. I was over there when my dad would be up here preaching on Father's Day. It's something about it. But when I got up this morning, I told myself, but God is with me. So I got to go do what God has called me to do. So I have to show up when there's commotion sometimes and go, I've got to walk past weeping and wailing. I got to walk past uncomfortable moments. I can't just send y'all a message on the screen like, I didn't come. Read your Bibles this week. We'll holler at y'all. The wailing is going on. It is real. I'm helping you. Some of you are facing real stuff. Don't be all spiritual. Can you imagine walking to your house? Somebody told you, hey, I know your daughter was sick earlier. She's dead. That's the last report you got. And all you got right now is Jesus. And you show up, and then people are crying like it's already over. But watch what Jesus does next. So Jesus went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep. Now, Jesus ain't seen the baby. Because somebody was like, he didn't even go upstairs. How you know? What are you going to do? At that moment, you got to look at Jesus. Because Jairus, I'm telling you, when you're out here on faith, you look crazy. When you're out on faith, when we were trying to buy this building, we're in the process of doing, I was buying it from there were 2 parts of a church. So the first part, he was being real easy about it. We were making everything work. There was another side that was causing me problems. And then they came like Mafia City on the second end, and they were just kind of like, hey, if you don't have this money by this day, we taking it back. You can't buy the church. We're going to put it on the market. We doubling the price. I was like, hey. Jesus love. That didn't work. I said, they were like, we want the money. But see, and it looked and sounded crazy because I told the other place, we won't be back. They were like, well, hey, just in case your other place doesn't work, do you want to keep your contract open with us? See, it was like, I said, no, I can't serve 2 masters. So I said, I'm going to go all the way out here with Jesus. And I said, now close our contract because I said, I got 4 days left. What happened is 3 days came, 2 days came. I went to this one bank where we have a relationship and the guy said, we'll come and meet you at the building. I was like, okay. And we walked around the building. And when he showed up, it was the president of the bank and the CEO of the bank. CEOs and presidents don't come on road trips. He walked through the building, and then he called me, and I was actually in here, standing right here, kind of praying like, God, I'm at 48 hours. I'm like, you're going to have to do something. They were calling me. but my phone was in another part of the building. Nobody was here yet. This is kind of towards, right before COVID. When I left, the messages, you leave sometimes, all of a sudden your phone makes. I picked up the message, and this woman was calling saying, they've approved you. Call me. I said, okay. I called the bank back, and she said, come on Friday and just pick up the stuff. We just need you to sign some papers. I called Pastor Jori. We're jumping in, praising God. We got the money for the building. It wasn't until we were on our way to closing. I said, Jori, I didn't ask them how. It's okay. Y'all all right? Everybody okay? The door just closed. Y'all be like, okay, wait. Just I'm praying for you. Y'all, I got a funny church. That's why we talk. Y'all don't understand. People online be emailing, saying stuff to us. I'd be like, you got to come here to experience it. So anyway, when we were on our way to the closing, now anybody ever bought a property? Anybody ever bought a house? When we got there, I said, now you ever felt like it's too late to bring something up? I said, we didn't bring no down payment. Because, it was a sizable amount, so it wasn't like, let me just get my wallet real quick. Because y'all know how my credit work, you go into my savings and it transferred to my checking. And I was going to explain to the bank, I can't write this check till Tuesday. They said, no, we don't need a down payment. Just buy the building and go get it from the people. See, what I'm telling you is when you show up in faith and you stand, it's not comfortable, it's not easy, but God will show up some kind of way. So everybody's crying and stuff, and then Jesus walks in the house. Why y'all crying? Stop. This child isn't dead. She's only asleep. You ain't seen her. How you know? Watch this. Tip 4. We're not moved by what we see. I'm speaking to some of you dads. You can't be moved by what you see. I'm speaking to some of your moms. You can't be moved by it. You're like, well, this kid is doing this. I'm not moved. This is feeling this way in my body. I'm not moved. I can see it, but I'm believing. I can see it, but I'm believing. I can see it, but I'm believing. The documents are saying this, but I'm believing. I can see it. Everything was saying a funeral is going on, but then Jesus shows up and says, hey, everybody, calm down. Watch what happens next. And they ridiculed Jesus. Now, Jesus has come to do something amazing. Jairus and them brought Jesus Christ to the house. And instead of people going, yes, man, we with you, they started ridiculing him. What are you talking about? You don't even know. No, she dead. She dead. But when he had put them all outside, woo, I'm telling you, sometimes you got to clean house. Yeah, I know. Bless you too. Come on. Get out my life. I need you to move. I'm so out here on faith. If you can't be with me right now, I got to leave you alone. But when he had put them all outside, ain't that something? I know that's not the best English, but ain't that something? He didn't put half of them out. You know why he had to put them all out? Because nobody was walking in faith. Who are you hanging with? Who is coming to you in times of crisis? Are you got weepers and wailers, or do you have somebody showing up like, you good, man, we good, come on, God's going to do it? There was not one relative. There was not one friend. There was not one neighbor in the house going, Jesus is here, Jairus, it's good. God had to put everybody out. And says Jesus put them all out. He took the father and the mother. Now, I don't even have enough time to go into this. But what in the world is going on with the mom? Last time she saw her husband, he was like, babe, I know she's sick. How's her fever? I'm going to go find Jesus. I hear Jesus is coming. This boy been gone for we don't know how long. This is Bible day. This is walking. I don't know how far he had to walk to go, but what if the mom had to watch death happening? But something must have happened because the mom stayed in the house. If the mom had been out of faith, Jesus had to put everybody out who wasn't believing. That mom had to watch her daughter die in front of her eyes and say, it's okay, is Jesus coming? Is Jesus here? Jesus is here, let's go, let's go. See, what are you doing? She's watched her dying. The husband is thinking about her dying, and now they're with Jesus. But now you got a choice. Jesus took the father and the mother of the child, and those who were with him, this is 3 disciples, and they entered where the child was lying. Next, tip number 5, we go all the way. When you're walking by faith, I'm telling you, sometimes it is up to the last minute. And you got to keep saying, yep, we're still fine. Yep, we're good. Yep, it's okay. Yep. And people are like, it is getting worse. It's okay. I'm telling you, I'm helping you. See, I could be one of these preachers up here and just tell you, God's going to show up. He's good all the time. You ain't got to stand. You just got to believe. Nothing wrong with the style. I'm more concerned about the substance. I'm telling you, you're going to find yourselves in moments where it's going to take every bit of your strength to keep standing when you're looking at something that is dead in front of your eyes. We go all the way. So they go into the room. Next. And then it says, then Jesus, he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kumi, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Next. Immediately. Now, I need you to understand. If he did it immediately with the girl, it's the same immediately he did with the woman with the issue of blood. See, what I need you to understand is the same source of power of God is available over here. So when you hear somebody else's miracle that sounds unbelievable, hold on to it and say, he's going to show up in my version and do whatever he has to do in my thing. Immediately, the girl arose. Oh, I'm sorry, go back. The girl arose and walked. For she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. All this started because a man decided to walk by faith. A father could have just said, babe, she's sick, let's just bury her. But he had the audacity to believe Jesus. He didn't know him yet. He was of a different faith. He didn't have a relationship with him yet, but he had heard enough. Now, if Jairus can do that and you have a relationship with God, Jesus hasn't died on the cross for Jairus. He's just living at that point. You know Jesus has died and rose again. So how dare you think that God won't show up in your situation? That's why I've come to tell you, you got to fight with your faith this morning. Here's what the scripture says. In 1 Timothy, it says, fight the good fight of faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called when you were made your good confession in the presence of many witnesses. This is what Paul was writing in his letters right before he was getting ready to die. One translation, basically, he was saying, listen, I'm not becoming a castaway now. I've used my life to be a blessing. I fought the fight. I've run my race, is what he said. But see, we don't have to wait till it's the end. We can do it right now in the middle. So what I'm asking you to do is remind yourself, I'm going to fight by faith. When situations come, I'm going to fight by faith. Now, the reason I started with Batman is because he had no extra superhero powers. He just decided to use his body, use his wealth, use his resources to fight the fight he was in. You have everything you need. You have everything you need. I know you're saying it would be easier. That's not the point. I didn't talk easy. I said you have everything you need to win this situation. You have everything God has already given you, everything you need to win. So now the question is, are you going to walk this thing out? Are you going to be able to stand when you've heard, no, it was a bad situation, it's a worse situation? That's okay. Jesus is going to show up. No, it's okay. God's going to be here. It's okay. And I'm telling you, I cut people off sometimes. They start saying stuff like, yeah, well, I'm not believing that. I don't get all super deep. Because I look at this story and I go, he will show up for Jairus. He will show up for me. And you know how much we love this story? This is where Jai is named from. We took this story and we said, hey, we're going to name our son Jai. And his name means this, a man of royalty and of great faith. You know why? Because it was a way for me to take Jesus from a theoretical idea to a natural, everyday thing. So then when Jai was almost 2 years old and he was bold, his legs were out like this, and they said, we're going to probably have to either break his legs to get them back in position. He's going to probably have to have braces. We saw it on the screen, and we were like, he's a man of royalty and great faith. And they were like, well, you're going to have to make a decision because as he gets older, it's only going to get worse. We were like, we're talking to a God who can show up. And honestly, there was no big voice and no booming. We just started going. And one time they said, well, wait a minute. His legs are starting to straight out on their own. What's really funny is I'm more bow-legged than Jai is now, and his legs was like this. You have to stand until, they were like, you got to do surgery soon. You've got to stand until the very end. Fight the good fight of faith. Fight the good fight. It says fight the good fight. You know what a good fight is? It's a fight you win. Come on, give God some praise if you got some out of the word this morning.